Hey guys, I can record this video now that I've got my voice back since the weekend. So I just won the Crystal Cup Fire in Australia, which means I'm the first of 2 representatives from Australia going to Worlds this year. Obviously, I got a lot of questions about my deck all over the weekend. People are like, what the heck is going on? What are all these cards doing here? So this video's been going through the deck. I'm basically going to cover pretty much every card. Obviously, I'm going to group some together, but I promise you that every card and every ratio in here has a reason. This deck actually did go through a lot of iterations. Basically the basis of the deck is the best Snow deck. So Snow in a vacuum, it's a very degenerate card. It basically removes an entire mechanic from the game, which is combat. It basically reads your opponent can never block again. But what's cool at the moment is that removing blockers without killing them can be beneficial. For example, you can get past Porom without triggering it. You can keep EX Pain down so they can't play the starter pain and get a lot of value out of that. You can keep Fina down once they play it so that they can't hard wipe you anymore. So there are quite a few benefits associated with that. But also in Final Fantasy, no matter how big a forward is, it still only deals 1 damage, as we know. So the only real drawbacks to low power are that it can't win combat, and it's easier to kill with removal, like damaging effects, etc. So we just established that Snow effectively removes the combat part. So the only reason we really care about power in this deck is how easy the forward is to kill. And the answer to that is to make it inefficient to kill them. Board clears are actually quite efficient currently, and especially the prevalent decks, efficient board clears are huge, and so that's harder than it seems to make forwards inefficient to kill. But on the bottom end, we have Layla, Viking, and Porom, so they all died of Valor, but Layla and Porom, and like the Viking that comes out of Layla, in total, they cost 0 basically each, so losing them to Valor is not that big a deal. I mean, it's not nearly as big a deal losing other forwards to Valor, so that's alright. They're just your kind of bread and butter board presence. So there's just bodies give you damage pressure while they're there. If they die, not a big deal. Next up, we have Black Mage, who also costs 0. It does not flat out die to Valor, which is good. It does die to Fina though. So with Black Mage, you don't want to be playing more than 1 to the field if they haven't played Fina, or if they don't have a Fina on the field or whatever. You basically don't want to let them hit 2 Black Mages with a Fina. Then next up we have White Mage, and this is the really funny one because heaps of people don't really know this card existed, and it takes no damage from Valor, and it doesn't die to Fina either, so it also doesn't die to both of them together, which basically means none of Windwater's board clears can actually kill it, and that is huge, and this is literally my solution to the Waterwind matchup. So this actually goes back to Opus 8 as well a bit. So when I was playing this deck in Opus 9, I was beating most decks except one person on my locals who played Jake Herbert, who played Windwater a lot, and it would keep beating me because not that I would be losing out on like the board and card advantage really, but he could just sit back blocking with Porom's Mage Sisters, just throwing like costless things in front, clearing me with Valor 4 Fina over and over and milling me out with Riku, basically. I mean, as you can see, it's really easy to mill out a deck like this with so much card draw. So that was a problem. And then I remembered that back in Opus 8, I tried this card called White Mage, because at the time Waterwind was also still pretty popular, but also at the time, unfortunately, Mono Water was really popular, and White Mage hates Mono Water, obviously. Like, Mono Water does not care about it, because Neg Power doesn't care. They got Cagnazzo, Nickel, Cloud of Darkness, so the card was really underperforming at the time, so I kind of benched it, and then forgot about it for a while, but then, like, last week, I basically remembered, as I was trying to think of ways to beat Windwater, I'm like, oh, that's right, White Mage, and best thing is so good, as you can see on stream as well. Anyway, so moving on though, that's all the cheap forwards, so that's like your bread and butter. That's how you keep the board presence, keep the damage pressure up with Snow and stuff like that. So next up, Genesis and Lock. So obviously, if we have Snow, this has obvious synergy with Genesis and Lock. If we have cards that give us free CP when they hit our opponent, then if our opponent can never ever block, then that's obviously really good. So it means they're basically always going to be discarding if they get to attack. Of course, Genesis has an excellent enter that often kind of stands in for Snow, or like flips the aggressor status. So what I mean by that is that like if they're more aggressive than you, sometimes playing a Genesis can then flip that, and now you're the aggressor, which means your Snow gets a lot better, and the discard pressure and the freeze can really help flip that around, then win you the damage race basically. Cloud of Darkness is still right at home, of course, but if you're wondering why there's only 2, the card is more situational than you think currently. So there is a decent amount of instant speed removal, and if you play COD expecting something to die, but then it doesn't die, that's really costly. And it wouldn't matter as much if Diablos wasn't like everywhere. Not to mention COD is only 8k as well, and that's kind of the new 7k in terms of like the value that's pretty efficient to remove. So basically the card is easy enough to kill efficiently that you need to be getting the value on its enter for it to be good. And believe me, I've always been the guy who, like, crucifying people for playing less than 3. But right now, at least in here, it is not as necessary, especially when we have Gestal. Sephiroth is just a decent neutral forward. It's probably the least important forward in this deck, so it's not like the core card like it is in a lot of other ice decks. But it is an option if you need like a CP sync or like a gotcha if they just happen to go to 2 in hand. That's the main time I use it. So I highly advise against just like slamming it early and hoping for the best. For summons, I maxed out on Zalira because the dull condition may as well not even be there thanks to Snow, and 1 CP killer guy is insane. Never have I felt so unthreatened by Y'shtola and Aerith, and it's probably the only card in the game that trades evenly with a live lock. So it's just a really solid card at the moment, that anytime there is a forward on the field that can die to it. And the other 2 are just great like toolbox options that we can get away with only 1 thanks to Porom. I won't list every example for Kuja Lane, but the easy ones are Porom and Major Sisters. And also it lets Zalira plus Snow break a cam if the cam is on ice, which means it can't be dulled by Snow, Genesis, etc. Glacier is my choice of on-demand dull. You can get back with Porom if you need the dull effect, go for game or whatever. Because it also sometimes randomly trades really well with randomly trades really well or stalls aggro. So it has like a couple of X uses as well. Whereas something like Shiver, which is another option, it really is only good for going for game. Onto the backups, they're mostly straightforward. Bran has like a million options, but I strongly advise getting Viking anytime you haven't seen one yet, just so that all your Laylas are online. Castalian obviously goes into lock, and Strago is our free category 6 2-cost backup, so that turns on Lock's enter ability a lot more. And Black Mage is a weird one for sure. Basically, I've never really endorsed the sacrificial backup mantra, since most games don't afford the luxury of getting to 5 backups and then needing to play a 6th. However, while I was I had various non-sacrificial options in that slot. While I had it that way, I did sometimes find myself at 4 backups and not being able to play a 5th because I needed the space for Snow or Gestal. And I never want to be giving up tangible current value for like intangible potential value later. So if you aren't worried about that, then Jill Nabat, the starter one, is a really good option in that spot, really good generic option. Setzer and Class 9th Moogle are decent if you slot in a couple other cards they support, like Diabolus or Celis. Now, the Dark Engine. So this is like really the glue that holds the deck together. It kind of covers all the little cracks here and there. For starters, Emperor Gestal is a category 6 character, so that is the 3rd backup, and that makes Locks enter perfectly feasible to resolve pretty often. Secondly, it is both hard removal and a backup, which is like the perfect response to aggression. And third, like Genesis, it can kind of stand in for Snow to push attacks through while you don't have Snow available. And lastly, it is hard removal for when actually killing the forward matters, not just dulling it. And the best example of that is Yuri. There are a few others, but that's the main one. That's all on the first ability though, and that's like damn good already. The second ability is just obnoxious. So playing camp for free is pretty silly. It's to the point where they don't even get a big lead if they have the Diablos during that one turn they get to kill it. And right now, if it lives that turn against almost any deck, it is a monster. It's really hard to kill for most decks, because most decks rely on only one element for their removal of big things like that. Most wind decks rely on Diablos. Ice decks generally try and cheese through it with like dulls and freezes and stuff. So most decks can't, if you have the cam active, they pretty much can't get through to you without like party attacking and stuff like that. The only real concern is Veritas and Fanfrit, which are really easy to play around in this deck. Obviously, you have so much cheap stuff to throw, so if you're against a deck that has those cards, then you just throw like little forwards next to your cam to make sure that doesn't happen to it. I guess Vayne is a possibility as well, but that card I don't think is that great at the moment, and it is a prime target for Emperor Gestal, so that's not too much of a worry. But the other kind of hidden benefit is because he's so immovable. He's like a large immovable body if you need like a free dull off Snow to kind of get your combat phase started. And that can, when they got a few like mid-sized forwards or even bigger forwards, that can really help push through Lock and Genesis especially. So that actually comes up more often than I expected when I first built the deck, and it just lets you avoid situations where you have to chump attack basically with like Viking or Porom to get the first dull in so your other guys can come through. As for the searching a second Castile is like pretty good. It can put your opponent in a pretty awkward position. It makes it really hard for them to keep being aggressive, so it's really, especially good against aggro. Chaos is still an option, of course, though, as well. So if you're missing one of your backup elements, or you just need a neutral play, that's just nice to have there. And the last card I have to talk about is, of course, Chocobo. So this is my favorite tech. I especially love it here because I used it in the same way for my Worlds Invite last year at Nationals. It's even funnier in this deck, though, because there are so many good targets for it. Genesis is a classic. Locke is, of course, decent as well. Even Sephiroth, though, can come down with the instant Dial Freeze, and that can actually be like really good and really come out of nowhere. Just the amount of flexibility and the game shots open up just by having Chocobo in the break zone with Gladiator on the field is insane. And for the record, it won me Game 3 in Finals, the literal last game of the tournament. It won me Game 3 in Top 8 as well, and it also won me multiple games in Swiss. So it was very, very good. I'm very happy that I included that once again in my deck. But yeah, like I said, this deck's been through so many iterations, but I'm so happy with that I found a format where it could win me a world slot. Obviously, the Archetype holds a special place in my heart ever since I created the first version in over 6. But it's really satisfying to feel like I'm the one who's capable of like pushing it over the edge. But like I'm not sure how much exposure will affect its power. It does feel really strong and flexible, but there is every chance that people are just making bad decisions, choosing the wrong cards to discard, choosing to have the wrong priorities, make the wrong plays, because they don't really know what to expect or kind of how it plays and how to play around it. And I mean, there's obviously also stuff like White Mage. That's like even besides that, people generally probably aren't making all the correct decisions. As for modifications, Lena is something that I definitely want to try. Rosa could also be worth a shot. I think Porom can probably go to 2 since there's only 5 summons, so you do sometimes have games where Porom is just blank for a while. On that note, the summons are pretty flexible too. I would never drop the 1 Kuchu, but I'd always have a Dull in one of those slots as well. It doesn't have to be Glassy though. Like I said, you could maybe try something like Shiver for a much more threatening game push. Or you could try dropping a Zalira for something like Poo-Poo or Moogle to get rid of excess dark cards. I originally did have 3 Cam, and in my head it would be perfectly fine, because while Cam's alive, I am winning, theoretically, and if it's dead, then I get infinite value off of Gastar playing another one. But I did run into issues at locals, so I went conservative for Crystal Cup. After Swiss, I was wishing I had stayed with 3, but I think I just had super bad luck, because my 2 losses in Swiss, which were my only 2 losses over the weekend, match-wise, were both to Fire Ice. And because I took both Cam's damage in both games, in the first one it was damages 1 and 2, in the second one it was damages 3 and 4. Both those games I had Gastal up, and Cam is a very important card in the Ice Fire matchup because that's what lets you be basically the person in control of the game, so to speak. So sometimes when we talk about Cam, we talk about like someone asks a question and someone answers the question. So often against Fire Ice, they're asking you the question because they're putting the pressure, they're putting the board presence, the aggro, the discard threats and stuff. They're asking you to answer it. Basically, it's like, can you stop yourself dying? Can you prevent me discarding from you enough to stabilize and then turn the game? In this case, at the moment you play Cam, you become the one asking the question. Basically, you're saying, okay, now I have a forward that you cannot get through, so now you have to find a way to get to me, and now I can do what I want to do. So basically, usually the person who is, the person asking the question has more options because there's not a specific thing they have to, deal with or answer, basically. I probably would try 3 again, maybe with like a Moogle or Pooper, like I said before, as in one of those summon slots, just to see how that goes, because I really do love the insane value you get off Gastal, and as I said, in Swiss, not so much in top 8, like top 8 maybe I got lucky, maybe it's just the deck was working as I wanted it to, but in Swiss I did have games where I have a Gastal up, and I'm just sitting there waiting for a Cam. Like the moment I get a Cam, I'm so much further ahead than if I don't have the Cam. But yeah, as for lack of Renoa, I think the card is just really badly placed right now. Devout sucks now, which was what made Renoa so reliable before, and so now you have to hold her in your hand, and you can't really afford to just sit around in the current format. You kind of have to be doing something relevant every turn. No Renoa, of course, means no Avatar, but it also means no Sid Reigns, and Sid Reigns is actually decent by himself. He does die to Fina though, and so you can't play him alongside Black Mage, so that's the reason that Sid Reigns is not in this deck. I do like Sid Reigns though, but yeah, I especially loved him with Renoa, so without the Renoa, there's not as much reason to play the Sid Reigns. But that's basically everything in the deck. I hope that kind of explains what's going on here. Thank you so much, everyone, for all your support. I get so many nice messages online all the time, and all my friends at the event are all like, cheering me on and stuff. So that was awesome, and thanks so much to my opponents. All my top opponents were like really great matches. They all down to the wire, which I love, like Rob Meadows, Tony Shee, and Ethan O'Connell, who actually this is his first top as well, which is really cool. And he's also playing my worst matchup. So as I said before, the mono water disappearing is the reason that I can play White Mage again. But my top 8 opponent was Ethan playing mono water, which is my worst matchup, and that was a super close game. So yeah, thanks for that, Ethan. Thanks for keeping me honest. But yeah. Thanks everyone, and also of course thanks as usual to my supporters on Patreon, Jake Herbert, who was actually there with me at the event, and Ryan as well, Ryan Bensley and Matthew Price. So I love the community in this game. I'm so keen to meet everyone in America at Worlds. So thanks everyone. And I'm so sorry I haven't released a video for a while. Basically, I guess like real life kind of caught up. I finished uni, did job interviews, got a full-time job, and then at that point, Crystal Cup's coming up, and most of my free time was spent preparing for that, my FF time. But I know that's not an excuse, so I really apologise that I haven't. I'll try and put out more when I can. So thank you everyone for being patient, and thank you everyone for all your support. Cheers.